Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining me for this episode of The Unlovely Truth. I'm your host, Lori Morrison, and as always, it's time to talk about what happens at the intersection of faith and true crime. I'm also going to share ways that you can make a leap from the audience to the action through service. Don't forget, some of our conversations might be a bit difficult for young or sensitive listeners. You and I, though, are going to go ahead and dive right in. Americans are slightly obsessed with stories about serial killers. There are at least a dozen published books about Ted Bundy and about the same for Charles Manson, not to mention everything written about John Wayne Gacy, Wayne Williams, Gary Ridgway, and others. But as retired cold case investigator Paul Holes told Rolling Stone magazine, cultural changes like fewer women hitchhiking have made it harder for these and other roving killers to find their victims. But there was still one vulnerable group of women who was willing to get into a car with a stranger: sex workers. The man known as the Green River Killer, Gary Ridgway, even admitted that he chose prostitutes as his victims because he thought he was much less likely to get caught. For a time, he was right. Even though deaths where victims were murdered by a serial killer only amount to a small portion of all murders committed in the U.S., our interest in what makes a serial killer tick remains strong. In this week's episode, we're going to take a look at the cases of 10 women killed in Baton Rouge, Louisiana between 1996 and 2002. They have some striking similarities and a number of killers who seem to feel like Baton Rouge was an ideal hunting ground. Diana Williams' family thought she might be working as a prostitute in the late 1990s. Crack cocaine had changed the woman they remembered. She would disappear for days at a time, so when they hadn't heard from her for a while in early 2000, they waited 3 days before contacting police. Her nude body was found on April 13, 2000. Diana had been beaten and strangled. And she wasn't the only one. 5 of the 10 bodies thought to be connected were found within 1 mile of North Street Park. 9 of the 10 were known sex workers. 7 of the bodies were found in very distinctive poses, but for understandable reasons, police won't disclose those details. Patricia Carter was 25 years old when she was severely beaten and killed in April 1996. In July of that year, 36-year-old Terry Jackson's nude body was found. She too had been strangled. In February of 1998, 47-year-old Claretha Thomas was beaten to death in her kitchen. Shirley Mickle, 33, was found in October 1999, dead from blunt force injuries to her head. The body of Tanis Walker, 36, was found days later in the same general area where Shirley had been found. She'd been strangled too. Next was Patricia Hawkins, 39, found in a patch of bushes. Then on June 8th, Veronica Delcourt Courtney, 44, was found strangled. Frances Baldwin's body was discovered in her home in August of 2002. The 47-year-old was not known to be a sex worker, but there are other similarities. She was nude, posed, and had been beaten as well as strangled. Finally, in December of 2002, Tawana Hayes, 29, was found naked and choked to death. The cases of each of these women are still open. If you long to make a difference for victims and their families, but you're not quite ready to go all in, I've got just the thing for you. I've put together a prayer guide called Service from the Sofa, which gives you 10 specific needs to pray for, plus one very counterintuitive prayer that is so desperately needed in the true crime world. Just visit my website at theunlovelytruth.com and scroll to the bottom of the page. Subscribe with your email address and I'll send you your copy of Service from the Sofa, which I hope you'll print out and use often because we definitely need to raise up more true crime heroes. The Baton Rouge police have had several suspects in the slayings of Diana, Patricia, Terry, Claretha, Shirley, Tanis, Patricia, Veronica, Francis, and Tawana. 3 of these suspects turned out to be serial killers. Even with a population of over 200,000 people in Baton Rouge, that sounds almost unbelievable. And it makes you wonder, how many serial killers are operating at any given time that no one knows about? Derek Todd Lee, who would eventually be known as the Baton Rouge serial killer, was arrested in May of 2003. He was a suspect in at least 7 murders. Police were familiar with Lee because they had arrested him for stalking and being a peeping Tom. He was eventually convicted of 2 of the murders that he was suspected of and received the death penalty. He died in 2016 of natural causes while still on death row. You have to stop and wonder, did he have anything to do with the murders of these 10 women? Sean Vincent Gillis was born in Baton Rouge and raised in southern Louisiana by his mother and his grandparents after his father abandoned the family. By the time he was 17, he was getting into trouble with the law. He committed his first murder in 1994, but wasn't arrested until 2004. He confessed to the 3 murders he was being accused of, then helpfully went on to confess to 5 more. Authorities couldn't connect him to any of the 10 cases that I've featured today. In 2009, Baton Rouge police arrested yet another suspected serial killer, Jeffrey Lee Guillory. He was convicted of the second-degree murder of Renee Newman of Baton Rouge on the basis of DNA evidence. Renee also had been strangled. His family believes that some of the murders he was accused of were actually committed by Derek Lee. Authorities have never been able to tie Guillory to the murders of these women either. A task force was formed in June of 2000, but none of the cases have been solved. Leads have dried up, and according to police, DNA at this point is unlikely to help solve these cases. What they need is for someone who knows something to come forward. Now, if you've listened to more than one episode of my podcast, you know that I think there is always someone out there, and probably more than one someone, who knows enough to move this case forward. If that person is you, please come forward and talk to the Baton Rouge police. Society may look down on these women because they were prostitutes, but they were also daughters, sisters, aunts, mothers, and friends to the people who love them and need to find the truth about their deaths. These cases remind me so much of the connected deaths of another set of women in Louisiana, the Jeff Davis 8. I did 2 separate episodes in my first season about those cases, and you can find links to each in the show notes. Someone holds the answers to those murders as well. So please, share this episode far and wide, and let's get these families some answers. The Unlovely Truth is written and produced by me, Lori Morrison. Music is by Neocortex, and artwork is by Shelby Highland. Remember, check out the show notes for links to all kinds of helpful resources, and sign up for my email list to get your copy of Service from the Sofa. See you all next time.